CTET preparation sessions. We are discussing child development and pedagogy. I would like to apologize for the previous technical issue. Because of some technical glitch, we were not able to process. Nevertheless, as we are here together, let us continue. And we are discussing today National Curriculum Framework 2005. And we are in this session, we will be covering the guiding principles, the 5 areas that the NCF 2005 has talked about, and also the constructive spirit that NCF 2005 carries. NCF 2005, the National Curriculum Framework 2005, was the one that introduced child-centered learning, the constructivist approach into the curricular framework. And it's very important for us, as we might be thinking that now new curriculum framework has come, the new education policy has come, the questions might not come from NCF 2005, but that is a wrong conception. Even in the previous question paper, they have asked questions where they have combined NCF 2005 and National Curriculum Framework 2023, and they have asked questions. So it's very important for us to understand कि NCF 2005 में क्या क्या दिया गया है, किस चीज़ों के बारे में डिस्कशन किया गया है, and how this curricular framework has also created a path for our new curriculum framework to build on it and improve the current state of education. So let us go ahead. Before that, let me introduce myself. I am M. Pavan Kumar, a Senior Research Fellow from Regional Institute of Education, NCERT, Mysuru. Let us start. So what are we going to cover in today's session? We are going to cover the basics, right? This National Curriculum Framework 2005 is the 4th curricular framework post-independence. And we are going to discuss in today's session who issued it, what did this curricular framework replace, and the Tagore-rooted aims of education that it discusses about. Then we are also going to discuss the 5 guiding principles based on which the NCF 2005 is based, right? Connecting life to knowledge, connecting knowledge to life, right? We are moving away from rote learning. Then we are going beyond textbooks. Flexible examinations is something that NCF talks about, and it also talks about carrying the identity of learners in the classroom, right? Then we are going to discuss the 5 key areas that are discussed, that is perspectives in education, learning and knowledge, curriculum, stages of assessment, environment, and educational reform. We are also going to discuss about the constructivist core that National Curriculum Framework 2005 carries. It talks about learning as active construction of knowledge by learners, not something that a teacher does in the classroom, and the idea of examiners written again and again. Then we are also going to discuss what is there in this National Curriculum Framework 2005 for teachers who are attempting CTET paper 1 and paper 2. There might be teachers who are attempting only paper 1, but there are also teachers who are attending paper 1 and paper 2 both. So for this, in this we are going to discuss what they have discussed about mother tongue, the plurality of textbooks, the multiple role that textbook carries. Then how can we intelligently guess the correct answers and avoid errors while attempting the examination. Right. So as I was saying that this is the 4th National Curriculum Framework. So NCERT before this had issued National Curriculum Framework 1975, which was the first one based on our National Policy on Education 1968. Then came the National Curriculum Framework 1988 based on National Policy on Education 1986. Then came NCF 2000, and then the 4th National Curriculum Framework is the NCF 2005. NCF 2005 is the 4th National Curriculum Framework, which is very important for us to issue. Now, who issued this National Curriculum Framework? NCERT is the body that issued National Curriculum Framework 2005, a guideline within which teachers and schools choose and plan the experience. So what is this National Curriculum Framework? It is a guideline. It is a guideline within which teachers and school can choose and plan the experiences children should have when they learn in a classroom, right? So what they have discussed, this NCF 2005 is not a rigid syllabus. It talks about how transaction should happen in class, what should the content cover, and how learning should be. Technically, they're talking about learner-centered learning. Then the NCF opens with a Tagore quote, similar to our other curricular frameworks. Quote Tagore's Civilization and Progress, right? What they say is a child's creative spirit and generous joy must not be destroyed by an unthinkable adult word. They say, or what Rabindranath Tagore says is that children are curious thinkers. They are born curious. If you have seen small children and when you interact with them, they keep asking, what is this, what is this, what does that mean, what does this mean, right? They are naturally curious. And what NCF is trying to do, how it's trying to take up the Tagore's quote here, is that even classrooms, even schools, even learning via textbooks in the classroom transaction should be in such a way that this curiosity of asking questions should not be destroyed. They also quote that the current adult generation is distorted by an unthinking adult world, right? So students should not be forced to this unthinkable adult world. They should retain their curiosity and they should be carrying forward the creative spirit. Then comes upholding the constitutional vision. Draws on India's secular, egalitarian and pluralistic idea, right? It's founded on the principles of social justice and equality. NCF 2005 heavily emphasizes that the textbook that are there, that the teaching that happens in classroom, the transaction of the curriculum that is there, it should always uphold constitutional vision. It should, teaching should uphold the values of secularism and egalitarian pluralistic society, and it should be founded on social justice and equality. Then when we look at the broader aims of NCF 2005, they talk about independence of thought. They say, the NCF 2005 states that children should become independent thinkers, not only independent thinkers but also independent doers, independence of thought and action. Children should not be dependent. The purpose of education is what NCF 2005 talks about, is to make children independent thinkers and doers. They should not be dependent forever. Then they should also develop sensitivity towards others, perspectives, views, practices, beliefs, which is very important for a democracy to go forward and thrive. So NCF 2005 also emphasizes about developing empathy, about developing perspective taking. Then flexibility and creativity, flexible and creative response. The classroom transaction, the classroom experience should be structured in such a way that whatever student teachers is discussing should be flexible, there should be scope for other things to be included in the classroom. And creative responses is something that has to be encouraged in classroom and motivated to carry forward. And this democratic participation is something that NCF 2005 talks about, is that the classroom participation should not discriminate on any way. The classroom participation that happens, children should not be discriminated based on anything, right? Everyone should be given equal opportunity to participate in class and should be motivated to participate in class. Then education should contribute to social change is what NCF 2005 talks about. The purpose of education is not just to fill them with information and knowledge. The purpose of education is not just to fill up like a vase, you are filling it up with water. No. The purpose of education is to make them resilient, make them equipped enough that they will be able to participate in the social discourse and contribute to the society as a citizen, right? So it talks about contribution to social change. Then the problems that NCF 2005 is naming and emphasizing on, these problems are learning has become a source of burden and stress. NCF says that the content load is so high, the curricular load is so high, the teaching methods are so rigid, so teacher-centric, that learning has become a source of burden and stress for students. What is it saying? That it is stating that evidence of deep distortion of educational aims and quality is observed in classroom. And it says that we should move away from that. And first generation learners, it has also discussed about first generation learners. Retention is imperative. Retention is imperative. We have already talked about education, access to education, and we all know, as you all are teachers, how much we are working hard for making school accessible and for retaining students in school. We are trying our best to curtail dropout and try to fulfill what RTE Act 2009 talks about. Then elementary education is now a fundamental right of every child. As I was just talking about, education till the elementary level has become a fundamental right of each and every citizen. Moving ahead, now let us discuss the 5 guiding principles of curriculum development. Let us look into what are these 5 guiding principles. The first one is connecting knowledge to life outside the school. This is a very important guiding principle of NCF 2005. What NCF 2005 states is that whatever is being learning in the classroom should not limit it to classroom. Students should be able to go out and experiment, find out and observe what they have learned. For example, if you are teaching a child the parts of a plant, the child should be able to go out and identify, okay, based on what I've learned in class, this is a leaf, right? This is a stem, this is a root, this is a flower, and parts of flower, stamen, pistil, corolla, all those things. So learning should not be limited to school. When a child is learning the Newton's laws, and then they are playing cricket and the child is able to understand, okay, this is how the Newton's first law, second law is working, right? And children play a lot. And why, if you look into the presentation or the session that we had on National Curriculum Framework 2023 and our National Education Policy 2020, they say play-based learning. All the concepts of science majorly can be applied to when they are playing, especially physics. Or the plays are so innovative in our country, so diverse in our country that even the concepts of biology and chemistry can be applied to the play. Okay, so that's what NCF 2005 also talked about, that connecting knowledge to life outside school is very important. Learners must link to the child's lived experiences and environment. When a teacher plans for a lesson, a teacher just cannot read the textbook and then go back to what they have studied in their undergraduation, maybe post-graduation, and then come back and teach a class. No, that way is not going to work. It is very important for a teacher to understand what a child already knows and then connect it to what they're going to learn and make them experience it and go back and connect it to the daily life experiences what the learners observe. This is what is the core of connecting knowledge to life outside school means. Okay, so learning must link child's live experiences and environment and not stay sealed inside the classroom. That is what we discussed in detail here, that connecting knowledge to life outside school is very important. Otherwise, what will happen? We all know the very famous meme that we call, or the, I think we call it meme, where a very famous meme is there that what we know in science, what we have learned in science is that mitochondria is a powerhouse of cell. Nothing more than that. But learning should not remain like that. The understanding of mitochondria should also let them understand what foods they need to eat to get energy, because they play a lot. There is a lot of connection that can be made, and it's teachers' role, it's teachers' responsibility to bring in such experiences through innovative formats, not just, lecturing. Let us go ahead and look at the second guiding principle, that is shifting learning away from rote methods. When learning happens in rote method, effective learning can never be ensured. When teacher is standing in front of the class and delivering a lecture, you may never know who is looking at you but daydreaming, who is sleeping, or what else is happening in the class. Understanding over memorization is something that has been emphasized on. When students memorize concepts, they are able to recall and write it in the examination, but the purpose of education is not memorization of content. The purpose of education is to make them understand what it means and how it applies to. Because whatever they're learning in school is applicable to their daily life. And this understanding, this knowledge that they are gaining from the classroom experiences should also make them effective and enabled enough to contribute and participate in the society. Right? So, the single most tested idea from the whole framework is that we have to shift away from the rote learning methods. Then, coming to enriching the curriculum beyond textbooks. What NCF 2005 is trying to say is that the textbook is one source. They are stating that textbook is one source among many. Teachers should not completely rely on textbooks. If you will see, NCERT textbooks are the ones that are very famous and recommended for most of the other competitive examinations also. But then what NCERT itself is saying, that textbook is just one source and teachers should not always depend on textbook. And the place where I come from, the Regional Institute of Education, NCERT, it very clearly states that textbook is for students to read. Textbook is not for teachers to teach. Teachers should take the concepts that are there and then build a lesson on it which goes way beyond the textbook and connects to learners' everyday life. So, the textbook, other than textbook, there is local knowledge, there are materials and context all of them count when it comes to learning in the classroom. So curriculum should be enriched and go beyond the textbook is what NCF 2005 is talking about. Then it also talks about making examinations flexible and integrated with classroom life. Examinations till then and after that also for many years only tested what the learners remember at the end of the year. But what was actually suggested here was that assessment should be a continuous part of the learning process, and assessment woven into everyday learning rather than separate high stress event. As we all know, board examinations is a very stressful event for every individual's life. We all can recall how we wrote our 10th and 12th board examinations and how much stress we carried. But what National Curriculum Framework recommended is that examination should not be one that tests everything that you know at the end. Examination should be continuous in everyday classroom where they are able to check your progress and able to know how you're understanding, where do you need support and help. Then nurturing an overriding identity informed by caring concerns. Okay, NCF 2005 talks about nurturing the identity of the learners. An identity rooted in the democratic, caring, polity of the country. It's very important for our learners to have an identity rooted in the democratic spirit, the identity rooted in nationalism, and this is what the National Curriculum Framework 2005 talked about. And these are the guiding principles, that is connecting knowledge to life outside school, shifting learning away from rote methods, enriching the curriculum beyond textbooks, making examinations flexible and integrated with classroom life, and nurturing an overriding identity informed by caring concerns. Now let us look at a question which has been asked in previous year's CTET examination. According to National Curriculum Framework 2005, transfer of knowledge should be by option A, active learning, option B, passive learning, option C, rote-based learning, or option D, memory-based learning. I hope you all have guessed the answer, and I'm pretty sure you all have answered it correctly, that according to NCF 2005, transfer of knowledge should be through active learning. Transfer of knowledge needs to be through active learning. NCF 2005 wants knowledge constructed through activity. Knowledge constructed through exploration, thinking, and observing, not just recalling and memorizing. That is why the correct answer here is active learning. So what NCF 2005 wanted, or how NCF 2005 wanted classrooms to be? They wanted students to explore, think, and observe. NCF 2005 stressed learning by exploring, thinking, and observing rather than receiving ready-made answers by the teachers. You should explore the concept. You should try to understand it and know how it is. You should be able to experiment things out. Then it rejects rote memorization. Principle 2 in action. The framework explicitly shifts learning away from rote and memory-based methods. When learning is rote and memory-based methods, students will remember what the paragraph says, but they will never be able to understand how it relates to everyday life. Then integrated approach is what has been discussed here. It also favors an integrated approach of learning. Learning how? Connecting knowledge across the subject boundaries. See, NCF 2005 is also talking about interdisciplinary learning here, where you can see connecting knowledge across the subject boundaries. Because there has been links, there is links in our National Curriculum Framework 2023 or our National Policy on Education 2020 also emphasizes that learning should be interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary. So the spirit has been carried forward from NCF 2005 and extended in our newer national policies and curricular frameworks. So the 5 areas of NCF 2005 are perspective. What perspective should learners develop? They should develop the perspective of upholding constitutional values. Upholding constitutional values as a citizen of India is something that every individual should do, and it is very important that learning to uphold constitutional values is taught from the school level itself to the learners. Then reduction of curriculum load. The more the curriculum load, the more the pressure on the students, the more the pressure on the teacher also. And when there is pressure on teacher, it is automatically transferred to learners, right? So it is important to ensure quality education for all. So there is a required for systemic change in the curriculum, change in how the textbooks are framed, and change in the teaching learning approaches, or let me rephrase myself, change in the learning teaching approaches that take place. Then, learning and knowledge. So it's very clearly stated in NCF 2005 that knowledge is not equal to information. Information is something that children know, and when they are able to use this information, apply this information in solving a problem or creating something or analyzing something, then this information is constructed into knowledge. I still remember one of the class by one of my philosophy teachers where she made clear distinction between what is information and what is knowledge. When a class is taught by a teacher through lecture method, information is given to students. That is not knowledge. Knowledge is when an individual is able to apply what they know in real life, then it becomes knowledge. So they have given this hard separation about knowledge and information, and they have emphasized on construct knowledge. Learner should be able to actively construct knowledge, and teacher should provide support. We should go back to Vygotsky now and recall that Vygotsky talked about scaffolding. So learners should actively construct their knowledge, and teachers' role here is to support them. Foster creativity, connect across disciplines, and plurality of textbooks is what NCF 2005 has talked about. Then they also say that curriculum stages and assessment. Even NCF 2005 has talked about 3-language formula, and they have said that mother tongue as best medium. If you can see difference here, NCF 2005 has said that mother tongue is the best medium, but NEP 2020 says that mother tongue should be the medium. If you can see the difference here, and they have talked about how subject should help learners develop specific abilities. Maths to develop reasoning ability, science to develop the inquiry ability, and social sciences integrating the both. This is how the curriculum stages and assessment should be planned in the classrooms and in the learning scenario. Then, school and classroom environment. How should the school and classroom environment be? They talked about minimum infrastructure. Infrastructure should not be too heavy in classroom, that it is difficult for learners to move around, or active learning taking place, or keeping a rigid infrastructure where we cannot effectively move the chairs, move the benches, right? Because when we look at the traditional classroom, where board is in the front, there is a platform for teacher and student sit down, it technically showcases the older behavioristic mindset of education. And if you look at the constructivist education, teacher is now not at the front of the class. Teacher is at the center of the class, and learners are around the teacher. And you can already see so many examples that are there where the classroom structure is designed as per the needs of the learners and not as per the needs of the teacher. That is what NCF 2005 is also talking about. Then revisit notions of discipline, space for parents and communities to be provided in the schools. Then they are talking about systemic reforms, teaching as a professional activity. Teaching as a professional activity has been emphasized, the role of teachers has been emphasized, and this also paved a way. It also paved a way for National Curriculum Framework for Teacher Education 2009. Also, they discussed about teacher autonomy. Teacher autonomy is very important in the classroom. While teaching in a classroom, if a teacher is held tight by the administration saying that you should only follow this method, you should only use these materials, and you should only plan the lesson in such a way, then teacher cannot use their creativity. So it's very important to provide autonomy and freedom to teachers in the classroom, is what NCF 2005 emphasizes on. When teachers are given autonomy, freedom, and resources, teachers can also do wonders and create effective learning spaces, effective learning environments, and resources for the learners. Then, reforms for quality and inclusiveness. Our infrastructure should be inclusive, the classroom should be inclusive, even the school practices, the teaching practices, and even the community practices that are related to school should be inclusive, is what NCF 2005 has emphasized on. Coming to the next question, which discusses the heart of the NCF 2005, constructivists such as Jean Piaget and Lev Vygotsky व्यू लर्निंग एज अ प्रोसेस ऑफ। इस क्वेश्चन में पूछा जा रहा है कि जीन पियाजे और लेव वाइगॉट्स्की लर्निंग को या फिर कंस्ट्रक्टिविस्ट लर्निंग को कौन से प्रोसेस के माध्यम से देखते हैं। इज इट ऑप्शन ए मीनिंग मेकिंग बाय एक्टिव एंगेजमेंट, इज इट ऑप्शन बी स्टिमुलस रिस्पॉन्स बॉन्डिंग, इज इट ऑप्शन सी पैसिव रिसेप्शन ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन, और इज इट लिमिटेशन ऑफ टीचर्स बिहेवियर। क्वेश्चन को ध्यान से देखिए। कंस्ट्रक्टिविस्ट such as Piaget and Vygotsky view learning as a process of, option A talks about meaning making by active engagement, option B stimulus response bonding, option C passive reception of information, या option D imitation of teachers behavior. So the correct answer is option A, meaning making by actively engaging in the teaching learning process. This is also what Piaget and Lev Vygotsky emphasize on when it comes to learning. So it's meaning making by active engagement. Learners actively construct their own knowledge by connecting new ideas to the existing one individually and socially. Individually when they are doing individual activities, socially when they are doing group activities. So what is the role of teacher here? Teacher should provide here support. Teacher should guide. Teacher should facilitate. Okay, the role of teacher here is to support, guide, provide the required resources, create the required and necessary environment to help learners construct their own knowledge by connecting new ideas to existing ones. And this connection to the new ideas to the existing ones has also to be done by the teacher. Okay, so connect new to old. Learners build mental representations of reality through activity, and road transport. The road transport child reshapes the idea of to include sea and air. When children come into the class with lot of understanding, lot of knowledge, you cannot say that children comes to the class with an empty mind. The child knows something or the other regarding the topic. You can never say that the child doesn't know anything. When you are coming to teach, you are going to introduce a topic of microorganisms to the students, maybe class 7th or class 8. And students already know microorganisms, but not exactly, they might not know the term microorganisms, but they have heard in multiple places. COVID lockdown was one major thing where they got to know about the coronavirus. They watch television, Lifebuoy ads, Dettol ads, they talk about germs, they talk about virus, they talk about bacteria. Or they might have visited a hospital where they might have heard people talking about bacterial infection, viral infection. So students carry a lot of previous knowledge to class. It's teachers' responsibility to make effective connections to what they already know to what they're going to learn, and provide resources to encourage and help learners construct their knowledge. Okay. Then social construction is what they have talked about. Knowledge for complex tasks can live in the group. When the tasks are too complex and require a lot of time, students can be asked to collaborate and work in groups. And there are so many beautiful techniques that are there where students can collaborate. Jigsaw is there, round robin is there, think, pair, share. There are so many techniques where students can collaborate and work in groups to solve the problem. Here through collaboration, not only the problem is being solved, the students are understanding the concept, but also students are building social skills. Social construction. The students are building social skills. The students are understanding how to effectively communicate with each other and work together. Then collaborative learning lets meaning be negotiated and shared. Students debate, students discuss, students argue. Right? It's very important and it is very healthy for an individual to understand others' perspective. Then intelligent guessing. NCF values intelligent guessing as a valid pedagogy. That is a zone between what you all know and what and almost know is where new knowledge forms. Based on what you already know, what are you going to learn? How? What are your learning is connected to what you already know is called intelligent guessing, and they have emphasized on that. And also value of interaction. NCF 2005 has extensively emphasized on value of interaction. Learning happens through action and language. Learning cannot happen when the student is just sitting with their head down and trying to listen or trying to memorize what is there in the textbook. No. Learning happens through action and language, when they are doing something, when they are sharing their views, when they are debating. So moving, exploring, reading, asking, listening and interacting are the core values of interaction and learning. So a student should not be restricted to be stuck in their chair. A student should not be restricted to not do anything. A child is bubbling with energy. You cannot just control or uphold a child or make them sit in one place quietly. When you give them freedom with lot of responsibility, students can effectively and beautifully do things together and learn together. So coming to the next question, NCF 2005 has not prescribed any curriculum and textbook for EVS for class 1 and 2. The most appropriate reason is, when NCF 2005 had come, जब NCF 2005 आया था, तो उन्होंने फर्स्ट एंड सेकंड स्टैंडर्ड के लिए कोई भी ईवीएस टेक्स्ट बुक नहीं प्रिस्क्राइब किया था. ईवीएस जो था क्लास 3 से स्टार्ट होता था. इसके लिए सबसे अप्रोप्रिएट कारण क्या है ऑप्शन दिए गए ऑप्शंस में से? ऑप्शन ए, टू प्रोवाइड अ कंस्ट्रक्चुअल लर्निंग एनवायरनमेंट. ऑप्शन बी, ईवीएस इज ओनली फॉर क्लास 3 ऑनवर्ड्स. ऑप्शन सी, क्लास 1 क्लास 2 लर्नर्स कैन नॉट रीड एंड राइट. या ऑप्शन डी, टू रिड्यूस द लोड ऑफ करिकुलम. Look at the options, try to think why NCF 2005 did not prescribe any curriculum and textbook for EVS for class 1 and 2. If you look at the correct answer, it's option A, to provide a contextual learning environment. When there is no fixed textbook, without a fixed text, teaching can be rooted in child-owned surroundings. What happens when a textbook is given? When a textbook is given, learning or teaching is restricted to only that textbook. What teachers also do? Teachers only teach what is given in textbook. Teachers conduct the experiments that are given in textbook. Teacher takes the examples that is given in textbook. And what actually learners need to know, what learners actually needs to connect to daily life is missed here. So that is why NCF 2005 did not prescribe a textbook and stated that learning should be context based on child's everyday life. Teaching can be rooted in child's own surroundings. They're talking about going from local to global, from concrete to abstract spirit of EVS. So the main thing is connect to environment. EVS at primary level. EVS at the primary level should link learners to their natural and socio-cultural environment. Okay, so at the primary level, when they are learning environmental science, it's not that they have to look into a rigid textbook. They should more focus on what their natural and social environment is. That is what EVS is all about, and not the technical terms that would come through a textbook. Then, mother tongue first. Home language is the best medium to build the foundation of education. Even NCF 2005 has emphasized that home language is the best to build the foundation of education. And it has extended it to tribal languages too. NCF 2005 made an attempt and extended this learning to tribal languages. Plurality of textbooks. NCF asked for many materials carrying local knowledge mediated through constitutional values. NCF encourages that textbooks should not carry one example. For example, what a beautiful example was given, which I can recall, is that you're teaching a child in, let us say, deserts of Rajasthan, a concept of evergreen forest. The child has never seen an evergreen forest. So it will be very difficult for a child to understand. It is necessary for them to understand the topic, but then at a very young age, it's better for them to explore their surroundings and understand where they are, how they live in that, and how their environment is rich with cultural, social and environmental heritage. So what NCF 2005 moves away from and moves towards is displayed here. So it rejects learning as a burden and source of stress. What NCF 2005 suggests is that joyful, burden-free learning should be there, which connects to everyday life. Then rote memorization based transmission of facts should be discouraged, and active construction of knowledge by the learner is something that has to be encouraged. The textbook as a single source of truth is wrong. Textbook is just one material, and plurality of textbooks and local materials have to be used for effective learning. Then examination as a separate high stress event is to be let go of, and flexible exams integrating with classroom life is necessary, where learning in assessment should go hand in hand with learning that happens in the classroom. Then knowledge confused with information. Here knowledge is built, reconstructed and understood. So this is what NCF 2005 moves away from and moves towards. So if we will take a quick recall, NCF stands for National Curriculum Framework. It is issued by NCERT. Number of guiding principles given in NCF 2005 are a total of 5. Transfer of knowledge is by active learning. Knowledge is different from information is what they have mentioned, and best medium for foundation education is in mother tongue. Approach to learning should be integrated, and number of areas in NCF also are 5. So with this, we'll come to an end for the NCF 2005 session. Thank you so much.